Hey everyone, welcome to Mystifying Miracles. Glad you're here. Today the story involves a father who actually gets to visit heaven. It's an incredible testimony and I'm going to dive into it, so stay tuned. It was 1986, just a few days prior to Christmas, and the setting is in New Zealand. And the people living there in 1986, they got what they had prayed for because you see, they'd been going through a long drought. And so rain had finally come. Not just rain, actually, but some pretty bad storms. However, the people were glad to just get the rain they needed. The night this storm blew in, there were a couple. Their names were Trevor and Jan Yaxley. And they worked in a ministry and they were putting on this evangelical rally for hundreds of teenagers. And by the time it was over and they were walking outside, it was dark. It was pouring rain and the winds, they were just blowing like crazy. But it was good that they weren't too far from home, so they didn't have a long drive. As soon as they get into their car, start driving, again, it was hard to see because the rain was so hard, and the winds actually push the couple's car into oncoming traffic. It was so strong. But thankfully, Trevor was able to steer it back onto the right side of the road. But after that happened, the couple start thinking heavily upon their two teenage children. Their children were 16-year-old David and 13-year-old Rebecca, and they had left the rally 1 hour prior to Trevor and Jan. So due to them popping up in their minds right in that moment, Trevor and Jan say a quick little prayer for their children, specifically because they knew that they were coming upon this treacherous part of road that they had to travel on all the time. So they knew they'd seen plenty of wrecks there throughout the years. In fact, the Yaxleys had assisted EMTs before many times at wrecks in this spot to be of spiritual assistance, to pray for those hurt. As they reach what is called Dome Valley, they see sirens, lights, police barricades, and it's on this bad part of the road. So they pull up to the police barricade, they stop, and they also notice a care flight helicopter that is trying to land. So they know right away this has got to be a bad one. Trevor tells his wife, stay in the car, I'm going to go check it out, see what's going on. And before he can even get out of the car, his wife Jan yells, it's David, it's David. I just know it's David. Trevor gets out, he goes towards where the accident is. He goes over the barricade and he can see the two vehicles involved. They're torn apart. You can't even tell that's how bad it was. And it was right at that moment, a teenager, his name was Andrew, comes running up to Trevor. He's bawling and he can't catch his breath. And he's so upset and shaking that he can't even get words out to talk to Trevor. But you see, Trevor's heart immediately sinks because Andrew is one of David's good friends. Him running up like that, it was confirmation of what him and his wife felt, that something was seriously wrong with David. Well, as I said, when he ran up to Trevor like that, Trevor says his heart sank and he started to feel this unbearable pain. He said despite the pain though, God immediately spoke to him, and this is what he said. Just watch what takes place now. You will see what I can do in a person's life. Well, a few days passes. It's now Christmas Eve, and unfortunately, the Yaxleys, they have to bury their 16-year-old son, David. 13-year-old Rebecca was not able to attend the funeral because she was still in the hospital. ICU actually, from her injuries. But thankfully, she would overcome all those and survive. After the funeral, the Yaxleys continued with their ministry. They knew that even though they felt that unbearable pain, that life went on. Their calendar was still full for that new year of speaking engagements and rallies and all sorts of things. So they knew that they had to carry on with the ministry. And 2 years after David's passing, everything was still so fresh to Trevor. No joy, no light had returned to him, and he thought that by now that would have happened, but it was like it still happened the day before, even though 2 years had passed. He says he didn't understand it because throughout the years in their ministry, he had seen thousands in his ministry throughout the years that were touched by God, and so many amazing things happened. So he was having a very hard time looking at his own life, and he's like, why does this still hurt so much? Why don't I have joy? Why is that not happening for me? Well, in 1988, the family takes a trip to South Island, and they work hard for a couple of weeks, 12 days of just meetings and all sorts of activities. So they were exhausted by the time it was coming to an end. And on their final day there, Trevor says he laid down on that motel bed and he was just like, oh, a bed. I'm exhausted, right? And he begins to think of David and how much he missed him. And he says, as he's thinking of his son laying in that motel bed, he says a prayer that for him and his wife, really. He talks to God about, Lord, and are we in the right place at the right time? Are we still doing what you want us to do? And once again, God answers immediately. And this is what he says. Yes, you are. And by the way, tonight, I'm going to take you to heaven. Trevor knew God's voice, and he knew when he spoke to him. But even so, he said he had to do like a double take and be like, it was almost like, come again? Huh? What was that? So he's laying there and he's thinking of the possibilities, thinking of, did I hear that right? Is God really taking me to heaven tonight? So, of course, thinking these things and thinking upon his son as well, he's tossing, he's turning, he can't sleep. I don't think I'd get any sleep either if the Lord told me that. So, hour by hour is ticking by, and he's still tossing and turning. Finally, at 6 a.m., Trevor rolls over and he talks to God. And he says, Lord, there's not much time left in the night. Daylight's coming in an hour. And he couldn't even get all those words out before something incredible happened. He said instantly he feels his body soaring up through the air. Like I don't know how long it was, but he said, it felt like the wind resistance. If you've ever been on a motorcycle and you're riding fast, or you can picture one, that's what the wind resistance felt as his body was being lifted up so fast. And of course, he keeps his eyes closed because of all the wind, but he could just see the lights, all kinds of beautiful lights on the outside of his lids, passing by as he's going up. Finally feels a thump, and then his feet hit the ground. When he opens his eyes, Trevor says his senses were flooded. I mean, everything from sight to hearing, to smelling, every sense, it was heightened. He says you didn't just smell something in heaven. You experienced it. He could feel it in his whole body, his whole being. He couldn't describe that other than saying heightened senses, and you felt it. You didn't just have a little old sense like we do here on earth. In that moment, as he's just experiencing all that, he feels love, accepted, comfort. So he's looking around and he sees this pathway leading away from this beautiful big tree. He's just kind of staring at that for a moment, and he senses someone's behind him. He turns to look and he sees a man's face that's just radiant. He said it exuded kindness and love to the maximum. And he said the man spoke to him, but his lips were not moving. So Trevor says he could understand every word, but it was like, what do you call it? It was in the head talking. I can't even think of the word right now, but you know what I mean. He wasn't having to vocalize the words back and forth, but they could still understand each other. And the man asks him, how are you? How long have you been here? He starts to fade away from what the man is saying because he's distracted. Trevor sees like this big, what looks like a playhouse kind of nearby, and he can't take his eyes off of it. So he goes in it. He says he had to duck because the doorway was quite small. So he ducks, he goes inside this playhouse looking thing, but it opens up into this huge room as you go inside. Like you wouldn't be able to tell it from the outside. So he says inside were all kinds of people with just their faces were also radiant and beautiful. He then turns again, and right behind him is David, smiling and full of life. Trevor says he looked perfect. You can imagine a father seeing their son like that in heaven, and all he wants to do is wrap his arms around his son and just squeeze him. But that's not what initially happened. So he says David wanted to, for some reason, play this game of chase, kind of like tag, if you will. So David immediately, right after he sees his father, starts running. And Trevor's left there thinking, oh, I wanted a hug, but okay. So he takes off after his son, chasing him. He said it was the wildest thing. And as he's running through all these fields and beautiful flowers, he said, you'd think you'd get tired or out of breath. Did not happen. It was like he wasn't even expending any energy. And he said all the flowers with all the colors that he couldn't describe, you didn't have to worry about running and stepping on them, because as soon as you stepped on them, they'd pop back up like they'd never been stepped on before. And he also noticed this about the flowers as well. He said as he ran, he could hear humming. The flowers were actually singing praises to God. They come up through some trees as they're doing this chase. David finally stops, and his father, Trevor, catches up to him. And that's when they hugged. He just looked at his son, David, and he said he just saw purity and perfection. David immediately asks his father, how is mom? And then he proceeds to ask, how is her garden going? Right before he passed away, he had actually helped his mother plant her garden at their home. Then David grabs his father's hand and he leads him through this field. It was beautiful, and Trevor described all these houses just covering the fields, just everywhere. And he immediately starts to break down. Trevor just breaks down in tears. And David says, Dad, don't cry. There's no crying here. But Trevor tells his son, I can't help it, son. I'm so happy. It's just the emotion is just coming. And they speak a little while longer. And then eventually David's voice begins to fade. And Trevor described it as it now felt like things were going in reverse. And it slowly started to speed up and then went really fast. So he feels that resistance again. And this time he's traveling back down to earth the same way God took him up, right? And he feels his body hit with a thump the motel bed. And upon doing that, immediately he just starts sobbing. So his wife, Jan, comes to his side and starts comforting him. And I mean, he's just overcome with what just, transpired. He said for the longest time, he couldn't speak about that experience, about God taking him to heaven, to anyone but his wife, Jan. And in that interim, before he started telling other people, people would comment to him all the time, you seem different. You look really good. There's something different about you. I can't place it though. And it was because all the grief had left him and joy had filled up his being. Having gone to heaven and experienced everything he did, Trevor says it gave him an energy and just a desire to share God's grace and definitely the message of salvation. And a quote, of course, from Trevor towards the end of his story. He says, God loves us so much and has put so much effort into what he's prepared for us. Isn't that just beautiful and exciting to know that there will one day be this place where everything's perfect. All joy is there. All pain is gone. I just want to say, guys, thank you for watching. Reading through this story again got me a little overcome with emotion myself. However, I hope it was a blessing to hear it. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. And I thank you for watching. I enjoy praying for you guys, and just thank you so much. I hope you have a great week. Take care. God bless, and I'm going to see you guys for the next one.